Just very quick, before I talk about the blogs, if you go to rapidlast.com, for example, and you type buffers, in the search box, I'm online now, then you get the articles I've written. Among others, this is one article. Oh, where's my magnification glass? This one article, which is called Use Buffers when Processing LiDAR in Tiles. And here you see what I mean with the crisp cookies. See, I even put a picture in here. That's the buffer here. It's not 20 meters or 30 meters, but for the cookie, already 1 or 2 millimeters is enough. There's a long explanation why buffers are important. The other thing you find here is somebody asked about canopy height model. Canopy height models. Sure. Here, rasterizing perfect canopy height models from LiDAR. That's again a long article. You can download the data from here and then follow step by step all these different ways with last tools how to create different canopy height models in case that's important to you. There was a thing with, I told you before, bunkers. And yeah, then you find that thing about German bunkers under the canopy. And on the same side, you find lots of tutorials. Actually, the same tutorials, just mentioned it before, I quickly want to show it. That's one hill shape created from an area in Poland. And you see that what looks like little rivers, well, if you look at it for a while, you'll realize it's not rivers, because rivers don't flow along the edge of the mountain, they flow in the valley. So these are trenches that are connecting these bunkers. And on the same blog post, you also have pictures of the bunkers, where you can see what they actually look like. There are a lot of tutorials, and I quickly want to mention, in case you want to do more exercises, in the main last tools folder, there are 4 PDF files that are step-by-step similar exercises like we do today. And there are numerous others on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you type last tools, you find like 50 hours of me at universities all over the world, Philippines, Denmark, Brazil, Canada, Australia. And it's always the same jokes. So you should be, that's the only jokes I know, including the one I just made. It's a good way to remind yourself again if you want to continue with LiDAR processing in your own time. Okay, the next processing step we want to do is to run last classify on the data we just generated. I'm trying to go a bit faster now, so we managed to get one final result before 5:30. Well, so with last classify, it's very similar to the steps before. Almost identical, and actually this is probably the simplest step. I just load the data now from Ayutthaya. I load the ground classified data. And it's important that we click that one button which was called compute height, because that is expected from last classified. If you read the README file, it says so clear, very clear, that the height needs to be stored in the user data field, which is exactly what compute height was doing. So I'm loading them, And actually now I quickly want to look at one of them. Select the file only, select one of them and press view. Just to make sure we really have ground information here. Oh yeah, that looks good. Looks like ground information was computed. Just a quick check before we do the next processing step. And I press escape, and I go back to process all files. And now I don't change anything here. I just pick an output folder. And we did that a few times already, output folder. I create a new one, and this one I call, surprise, surprise, I call it tiles classified. And I create it. I go into it, and I use it. That's the only thing I really change, except I run on 4 cores on my computer, or however many cores you have. It shouldn't take too long because it's not such a big data set. I don't change anything, any of the options. I leave it all the same. So I just loaded the data, I picked an output directory, and I run last classified. Last classified. The data I'm running on is the output from the previous step, the ground classified step. I run on 4 cores, and the only argument is really where to put the data and in which format. And I'm starting that. So last classify I haven't explained yet. What does last classify do? Last classify tries to come up with some smart yet simple way to classify buildings and trees. How does it do it? It looks for all points that are higher than 2 meters above the ground. There is an option where you can change that. If, for example, you wanted smaller buildings, the ground offset. It only looks at points which are 2 meters or higher. That's why it needs to know the height above ground. So everything else it just ignores. Now it looks at these points in a 2 by 2 meter area and looks how planar are the points. Are they very planar? Is the standard deviation just about 50 centimeters? Then it's most likely a plane, and planes are most likely roofs. Then it's a roof. Is it very non-planar? Is the standard deviation high? Then it's most likely something fluffy. Now that could be something that's actually fluffy, like not just vegetation, but what's really fluffy? Like a bunch of wires. A kind of, not fluffy, like, but no, points all over the place. A telephone mast, like a big, no, not a telephone, electricity mast, you know, that look like trees even, the big ones. They have points all over the place. They don't have, when they get hit by the LiDAR. Or a crane, like a building crane. Something that looks, where the points are all over the place, and not a plane. So it will do the wrong thing because all it has, for certain objects, because all it has is the geometry. And some things just look like, you will see that, some things look just like that. Okay, so that's done too. And that's all the LiDAR processing I want to do for today, I think. Now I want to create derivatives. But one of the derivatives I can create is I can try to extract all of the buildings using last boundary, at least approximately. So I'm running a tool called last boundary. I'm taking up the speed a little bit so we see some results. And even if you can't follow, you can still see what I'm doing. The steps I'm doing are quite similar to all the previous steps. So I'm now going to these classified files, and I'm loading them all. And now actually it's a good time to look at them. Yeah? How does the classification actually look like? So I pick one of the tiles and I say, look at this file only. If you don't do this, the viewer will load all the files, and then it takes a long time. And so I'm only looking at this classified tile, and voila. Here's my automatically classified tile, and have a look how this was turned out to be. And there I already have some things that I can see from here that look like vegetation, but they're not. Okay, so here I have some very nice classified houses. Okay. But I also have some very interesting construction. I don't know actually what it is. Maybe it's some water cleaning station or something. These things here, these water towers, well, I don't know what they are, but you see, they look fluffy because they don't form a plane. They could be a tree. The more closed ones here, they are considered buildings. Well, they are tanks, I think. But how is a tank different from a building, a round building? These kinds of information. But here, what do we have here? Huh. Beautiful. It's a house under construction. So the roof is open. It has two layers. It's not closed. They didn't put on the tiles yet. Well, that's a problem. Or maybe it's a temple under renovation, maybe. Actually, this could be part of the temple here. Now looking at it. And they're just putting a new roof on the temple. So if you want to hide your house from my classification software, just take all the tiles off the roof, because then the laser can penetrate your roof. And when it can penetrate, then it's like a tree, because trees can be penetrated. Roofs can usually not be penetrated unless you take all the tiles off the roof. So there is a typical impossible to correct error until I use some external. Now, if you do that again temporarily a year later when the roof is finished, this error will not happen, of course. Okay. Some other area here. Typical error when you have a river. I have some ferries and some boats, and they are trees or rather buildings. Hey, and maybe it's a houseboat. I don't know. Then it would be kind of correct. But maybe it's a ferry boat. But it's what I was looking for. It's a plane above 2 meters elevation. And here, maybe a whole bunch of people are standing here, and a bunch of wires and stuff. So it makes a very high standard deviation, and it's above 2 meters above the water. So it was classified as vegetation. And that's, of course, you just get it wrong. Because this seems to be part of the temple here. Typical roofs that you see in Thailand everywhere. And here, that's a 2 meter cutoff somewhere. Oh yeah, here you see an electricity tower that wasn't properly sampled, so I'm not sure whether it's vegetation or not. Okay, now with this tool, I now want to put a polygon around every building. And some of them, of course, will be wrong. So, first of all, this tool is scalable. So I will make one output, merge all into one, and I will call the output building.shape. Building.shape. I put this in the main directory. I don't need to create a directory because that's the building of this entire Ayutthaya area. Use current. And now, and I can't really explain this in too much detail, but now I want disjoint polygons because I don't want all my buildings to be connected to one polygon. And the concavity is sort of the granularity in meters of how close I think my buildings are standing next to each other. I can't make that much lower than the spacing of the LiDAR pulses. It needs to be like double the spacing of the LiDAR pulses maybe. And it shouldn't be too much bigger than the distances between the buildings. Otherwise the buildings will become one building because they're too close to each other. So I don't know what's a good number right now, maybe 1.2 meters. This is something you experiment a few times with practice. We don't experiment today because we don't have that much time. And now important, very important, I drop the buffer points. And that's why I marked them as withheld. I merge them all, but on the fly, I can say, drop the buffer points. Drop the ones I flagged withheld at the very beginning. And I need to add this. That's the one filter I need to do. The other filter is, I'm looking for the building points, so I want to use only the building points for this. So, keep classification 6. 6 is the building classification. Why? Because we all live in boxes, and boxes have 6 sides. Just another way to remember. So this means drop all the buffers, and from all the points that are not in the buffers, keep only the points which are building points. Then it will compute a triangulation from all those points. And then delete all triangles which have edge lengths 1 meter 20 or bigger. And all the remaining triangles are like islands around buildings, and it will make polygons around. So this will be our first LiDAR derivative. Start. And I'm already now starting QGIS. If you don't have QGIS, it's okay. That's my favorite GIS package. Yeah? Oh, I can't repeat it now. It's running. Or is it running? No, it stopped running already. Okay? QGIS, quantum juice. You can use any GIS software, but I like to use quantum juice. So what's more, I loaded all the, I don't want to do that again, I loaded all the points that were classified, Ayutthaya, classified, loaded them all. I used 2 filters. Filter drop withheld is down here, drop withheld to remove the buffers because I marked all the buffer points as withheld. And I keep only the, and I keep only the classification points. I keep only the points that are classified as buildings, the orange ones. I'm adding this filter. And on this side, all I really did, I clicked this join so that the buildings are not one polygon, but many polygons. And I changed this concavity factor. Oh yeah, and I merged them all into one and gave it this file name. And it should be done now. Yeah, there's one. Now I do the same thing again. And this time I again edit the command line. This is a little command line. Now I do the same thing with vegetation. I keep specification 5. I'm a bit more generous with what I group together, maybe 3 meters or 4 meters, 3 meters. And of course the output will now be called veggie or vegetation. Vegetation. So now I just change the command line. I keep, instead of 6, I keep 5, which is high vegetation. I use a slightly different vocabulary to be more generous and less granular, and I change the name. So where's my QGIS? Here is my QGIS. In addition to giving you the data, I give you OpenStreetMap data. Now, OpenStreetMap is a great source for free geospatial data, and I use it in all my exercises. It's not survey accurate necessarily, because it's crowdsourced by volunteers. But you know, if you don't have any other data, it's pretty nice data. So, for example, there's roads, and you can download it. That's a big thing. You know, I can get some roads. I can get some buildings. And instantly I have a bit of a map. You know, this is now map data from OpenStreetMap. I'm using OpenStreetMap here in India, and I must say the OpenStreetMappers in India are a bit lazy. It's not really that detailed as I would hope for. Sometimes, you know, I don't have the things in there. Yeah? Well, you got a lot of work to do, my friend. But now we can compare what we computed with OpenStreetMap, because I must say sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't because of the projection, but it should work. So I can put my vegetation on top of this. Oh, this time it worked. So you see, this is my vegetation. Maybe I make it green. Properties. Style. Fill. And I just give it a green color. Okay. Apply. Okay. So now you can already see that clearly these two data sets align. You know, I can see just visually they fit together. Of course, OpenStreetMap has a whole bunch of buildings collected. So we can go and now load also our buildings, the LiDAR buildings, and see how much work. This is Ayutthaya in Thailand. I put my own buildings on top. And we can see how much work is still to be done in Thailand, and at least in terms of buildings. In terms of buildings, there's also a lot of work to be done. So now we can compare. This is just what we computed. Fully automatic, with some settings. You know, I didn't really change very much. And I turned off the vegetation now. And now we can compare my buildings to the OpenStreetMap buildings. And, you know, we see they're not perfect, similar, but there's a lot of correlation, especially here in this area. They're almost perfectly aligned. Look at this one here. Computed, except I put those together as one because the distance between the two buildings is less than 1.20 meters, I think. But certainly it was a lot faster for me to get all these buildings compared to all the OpenStreetMappers that still have to go to all these other buildings and map everything. So it tells me there's a lot of work to do for OpenStreetMap. And now I turn on the vegetation again. And now, of course, OpenStreetMap will not have, will not mistakenly use the ferry boats as buildings. But now I can also make my DTM and put it on top of that. So that's something we haven't done yet. One of the typical LiDAR derivatives we should still compute is the DTM. Remember, we did the ground classification early on. I used the ground classification to normalize, to compute the heights and then make the classification of vegetation and trees. Sorry, vegetation and buildings. But I haven't really done the typical standard DTM yet. So last to them. And we did that before already for Poland. Now I can either use this one or this one, it doesn't matter. Both of them have the ground points classified. I have more classification here, but I already have the ground classification here, so I can use both. I'll just use this one. And now I make my DTM. I run on 4 cores. Now I can't merge into one, but I can compute a new output directory. Output directory. And I call it DTM. And this time I really create the DTM. Not the LJ, create. Here's my DTM folder. I go into the DTM folder and I'm using it. And these things are always repetitive, you know. So they will get, you know, when you do that a few times, they'll get boring after a while, and then you write a script instead. So we use the actual values this time. We make a 1 meter DTM. That's good. And now, very important, all our tiles have buffers still, a 30-meter buffer. In the DTM, I don't want to use the points from the buffer. And now, that's a really cookie cutting now. I will make the tin with the buffer. That's like making the dough. The tin will be the buffer tin of all the ground points. And then, I'm checking this checkbox. And that says, use tile bounding box. And that means the real tile bounding box, the one without the buffer. And that's basically really should be a sentence. Use tile bounding box as a gigantic 500 by 500 meter cookie cutter. Because now I'm cutting out only the center 500 by 500 meter to actually compute the raster. Raster is a grid. Grid is an image, elevation, grid, elevation, raster. But only the center, you know, from here to here only, and to here. Only the center 500 by 500 meters. And I do this everywhere, and then I should have nicely, seamlessly, without distortion, DTMs that fit together. And as my output format, I like to use the build format. It's more efficient than the ASC format. And, one more thing, almost forgot, I need to filter. Now I don't filter on the buffer points, because I want the buffer points, I'm creating the tin with the buffer points. The cookie cutting comes later, when I create only a raster in the center of the tile. But I still only want to use the ground points, because I want to make it DTM. So I want to only use the ground points for every tile, including the buffers. Make a big tin that's 30 meters bigger in all directions than the real tile, and then only raster the center 500 by 500 meters. running. Last step. For course, I keep the ground points, I raster the elevation, and I only use the tile bounding box. And I put all these tiles into the tile directory, tiles DTM directory, in build format. And now I should get 16 tiles, DTM tiles with 1 meter resolution that fit perfectly together. And then I can load into QGIS. So Ayutthaya, tiles DTM. Here are all my DTM tiles. Build. Here are all my build tiles. I now drag and drop them into QGIS. Here they are. Now I zoom out. And if you know QGIS, I can generate something called a virtual raster. Build a virtual raster. I use all the visible rasters. And I output a file called Ayutthaya DTM. Okay. So now I have a single raster from all the 16 tiles. I can delete the individual ones again. So here's my single raster, and now I can give it a different shading, and that's new in QGIS 218. I can directly give it a hill shading. Apply. Okay. And I move it into the background. Voila. And now I have my combined data set from OpenStreetMap with the roads. And maybe I get rid of the OpenStreetMap building. And this is my DTM. You see where the river is. I can put in the vegetation. I can put in the buildings. And I can make a map now. When I could run the flood simulation using Tau Dam on the generated using some other software, because this is an elevation now that I can actually probe. I can go here and I click on info and I want to know, well, what's the elevation actually here on this island, and I can go to, it's minus 26 meters. Yeah, I'm probably on whichever I have there. I'm not sure if ellipsoidal heights or if it's geoidal heights. I was just given that data set. But, well, I'm very likely it's ellipsoidal heights. Otherwise it wouldn't be minus 26 meters. Because then it would be really underwater. Yeah, so silly me. That's really the majority of things I wanted to show you today. And for those who leave early, I wanted to bring you some chocolate from Germany, but I've been in India too long, it would have all been melted by now. So I brought you some children's snacks that I always liked when I was in Germany. I'm still little, and they still have them today. So if you walk out early, you can come and pick up some, pick up a little snack just to reward you for sitting through all my boring times and my funny jokes and also my not so funny jokes, please, on your way out, this is the exit. And I think I also want to more or less stop here in terms of LiDAR processing, and so we have some time for questions before everybody leaves. And I have a lot of those, so don't be shy. They were heavy, and I want to get rid of them now. So, do we have any questions? No question. For every question you get an extras, but it has to be a reasonable question. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for coming in.
Martin, I'm late to get extra chocolate.
Oh, no chocolate.
There was no
Chocolate melted all in Pondicherry. My first stop.
The workshop was organized very well, and hospitality was great. And I think it could be extended up to 2 days. First half day for theory and next 1.5 day for practical sessions. By that way we can, cover all the topics, and these practical sessions can be carried on next day. Although it is great for we people to learn new things in LiDAR and to build DTM and DSM using this software that you have told us about, may be useful for us when we use that at our office. And I feel this is a good processing software. Then viewing properties of viewing qualities are not, I feel, as good as the commercially available software, but the processing and the capability.
This is a commercially available software. It's one of the best in the market.
Okay, but this time you actually.
There's a lot of really bad software in the market that's sold for very expensive, especially, I don't want to name any names.
Otherwise, it is great software as the processing of raw LiDAR data is done. So it's very useful. Thank you.
Yeah. So are you suggesting we make a longer workshop?
Yes.
When? Where?
It depends on the organizers.
Yeah. Well, he gets That's true.
You talk about DTMs in the beginning.
On the building?
Oh,
yeah.
That's actually not so much my forte because I'm hardly ever involved in the acquisition of the LiDAR.
my question is, like in DGPS we fixed one ground station and other GPS is on the platform, and it goes into certain area, certain say 10 km by 10 km area, and where shall we place other base station? Within 10 km by 10 km area we are going to acquire data, or if it is outside, how far can we keep to not compromise the quality?
I must admit, this is not something I know much about because I don't plan the surveys. Planning the actual flights and placing the GPS station,
I'm just listening to what other people do as well, and I can't give you a good answer. Sorry.
Dr. Martin.
Yeah, no problem. But it was still a good question.
So, Further, love the way you presented the topics to us, and I'm curious to know, LiDAR is really a wonderful phenomenon that's happening in the present society, right? Really, lot of insights are getting, we are getting lot of insights from LiDAR. So, where is this headed in the future? I'm curious.
When I think will happen that more and more sensors, even in the sort of everyday market of people, will be able to produce point clouds. We see that already now with matching data. And actually, I gave you one of those data sets. It is from one of my clients who posted that on the mailing list. So since he posted it on my mailing list, I figured it was fair enough to share it. It is from Drone Deploy, a drone company out of San Francisco. And so this data, it looks like colored LiDAR points, but that's actually generated from images through dense matching. Photogrammetry techniques, but it looks very similar to LiDAR. It's not exactly the same as LiDAR because
It cannot penetrate vegetation. A typical scene where you would use this, for example, is places without vegetation. Like here you see a mining site.
or like, sorry, it's not a mining site. You see a site where they have stockpiles
Of sand or gravel
or
or
I don't know what, and where they do stockpile management.
typically when you move around with the earth mover every day, there's not a lot of vegetation growing there, so it's a perfect use case for just using images and deriving point clouds from images. Gives you very dense point clouds that you can also process with LAS tools. Then people now having consumer grade drones with LiDAR are slowly coming on the market because these, of course the quality isn't nearly what you can get from the survey equipment, but there are so many geeks out there that just want to map stuff that interests them with something that they can do themselves, that you'll find more and more points in all kind of qualities from all kind of sensors coming online. Then self-driving cars, of course, will be equipped with LiDAR data. The LiDAR data on these cars is for a very different purpose. It's just really to measure distances, not so much to figure out on the fly a map, because the idea,
The safety of the self-driving car comes from the fact that the car instinctively knows where it is, and that all other cars know where all other cars are.
not so much that the car figures that out on its own. People sometimes misunderstand that you need the LiDAR so it's as smart as we. No. The self-driving cars can avoid almost all accidents because the computer controlling the self-driving car also controls all other self-driving cars. So if you come down the alley, one from here, you can go at full speed and you're not going to hit each other because the computer knows the cars are coming. But the human has to look and sees only on the last 5 meters that the other car is coming. So sometimes people think the LiDAR is sort of needed for that. No, most of the non-accidents will come from the organization of the cars, but the unexpected things, the things that are not controlled, like the pedestrian, the holy cow walking on the Pondicherry, there's many cows walking around. Yeah, you need LiDAR for that. If that LiDAR will be used for improving, incrementally updating the environment, I don't know. I know there's Apple Maps, Google Maps here, various telecommunication utility companies driving around with cars, collecting super high resolution data all the time, mobile. That's usually not shared because it's expensive. It's in private ownership and not done by the government. So there's points all over the place right now. And yeah, I didn't really answer your question.
Yeah. You should get two.
Sir, whether these LiDAR techniques are useful for detecting under the ground level something?
LiDAR techniques, my very first project for the lab where I was working on was to detect stuff under the ground. But the LiDAR function was not for doing that. It was supposed to be a blimp, and the blimp was supposed to be equipped with two sensors. One sensor was a ground penetrating radar that does the actual detection because it can penetrate. The other is a LiDAR that only detects the surface, and the idea was if you know where the surface is, you can remove the signal where it's really strong in the ground penetrating radar cleverly and focus on the stuff that's below. It was for a landmine detection system that was planned, but it was never actually built at the lab where I was working. I'll randomly pick the flavor. The flavor has nothing to do with the quality of the question.
Any other questions?
Sir?
Sir, how to classify the electric lines, automatic classification of electric lines through the software?
Automatic classification of?
Electric lines.
Power lines.
I have a development version of the tool called Last Wires, but I'm still working on it. I'm not happy with the result yet, so I will release it eventually, but I've been struggling so much. I'm working on it. It'll be called Last Wires. It'll detect lines. I'm not really sure yet what the target application will be, if it will be for power line work or really only for vegetation work, because you don't want to count the power lines as biomass. But I have to see how good my last wire detection gets. But that will be a new tool eventually joining the line. I already have a prototype version working, but it's not clever enough. I need to add more. Yeah, but
Then it is possible to classify the features like roads and accelerated and classify. It is possible.
roads is very hard because I have no solution for roads. Because roads are, you could use a color. You could use a color sometimes, but it's difficult because roads have different colors.
Roads go into parking lots. Where does the parking lot start? Where does the road end? To get a clean delineation of the road, I think to get that correctly done with sufficient accuracy that it becomes interesting and not just some sort of, I have some result, it's useless, I have to manually make it once more anyways. I haven't seen an automatic solution in any LiDAR software that I know is very good. Most of them, like CAD assisting software like Topodot, they're semi-automatic. You know, it sort of helps you place a bunch of points along the curve, and it snaps to it, and then it allows you to process it faster. But those are all semi-automatic operator, manual operator run things. I don't have one.
Sir, again after that, if I am having 10 centimeter accuracy of the data, if I am automatically classifying these building points, building into shapefiles, how much accuracy I will get, sir? Automatic classification of this building.
Well, what I've showed you today was more of a side effect of the modularity of LAS tools, because LAS boundary is not really meant to give you building edges. You know, I just classify the points, and then I make a boundary around the points. I don't have a tool called LAS building yet, which would actually try to fit buildings to the points identified as building points. Because I know a lot of things about buildings. You know, buildings don't have roof edges usually like that. I mean, at least 98% have straight edges. So I could make a straight edge, but I just define, I find the boundary of the points around the polygon. So there's a lot of things you can improve when you make a particular building extraction tool, which I don't have yet. So hence I never made such measurements. Because it's really, sometimes these things are discovered by other users. Tell me, oh, I just used this tool and this tool and this tool, and by combining it, I get pretty good building footprints. So, oh, okay. Originally, last boundary was designed to get the boundary of where your LiDAR is, and maybe find holes in the coverage. But you can also use it to get a rough idea of where the buildings are. So I don't have a tool last building, hence I haven't made any how accurate is the building compared to reality. The LiDAR point clouds itself then get delivered to, for example, a land survey within what you say, 10 centimeters. Because in Germany we do have catasters which are highly accurate. So you don't actually need, at least in my country, you hardly ever need to find the buildings because you know what the buildings are. You can just use the building footprints that exist already in shapefiles, and 2 of our states are now open data. You can download every building footprint from every building just by going to the webpage, including every parcel and every Liegenschaft, which is like a bigger area grouped together, and pretty much every other thing. Even LOD 1 and 2 city GML buildings, all open data for the entire state. Other countries where they don't have catasters, and there are many countries in the world, including the United States, that don't have highly accurate catasters. This automated building extraction, this high accuracy, is a challenge. I don't have a solution for generating those buildings to a building polygon kind of thing. Just because I've never sat down with it. Somebody else? Somebody else? Okay.
If we create a digital terrain model using digital elevation model, then what is the process behind it?
What's wrong?
If we create digital terrain model using digital elevation model, then what is the process behind it?
I don't really understand the question. When I create a digital terrain
Model, using digital elevation model.
yeah, but a digital terrain model, in my understanding, is a digital elevation model. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, both are on and same.
What is trying to ask, the DSM can get the where and D.
Okay. If I only have a DSM, because that's a very good. I talked about these point clouds here. This is a point cloud from dense matching. Dense matching photogrammetry. Dense matching is the new algorithm that finds that gives you very dense point clouds. They actually, if you go to one great place to get help, by the way, which also gets through the blog. If you go to support, if you click on support, you come to this group here, ASCO's user group, and there was just some guy, how do I control resolution and what is removed? That's actually the same data set. So you see here, he put up his points in LAS format. First thing I asked him, hey, can you compress it to a Z format? I'm in India, my download speed isn't so great. And then he sent it again in LAS format, and then I downloaded it, and I told him, you see, this is a good option for me to get results. And I showed him the resulting hill shapes, which I actually have already here. Don't deploy. Yeah. So this is a DSM to DTM for this particular scene. You see the cars are removed. and the trees are kind of removed, but for him it was important that the piles remain. So I figured out a setting that gives you this, and automatically these KML files are generated. By the way, when you have projection information. I'm online now, so it automatically goes then to the place on Earth. Most of the time, you only have a DSM when you have these kind of photo-generated point clouds. And so if you type here dense matching in the search box, you should find 5 or 6 articles. You know, I'll actually present this one at ACRS. How to, for example here, how to use external ground points to improve DTMs, generating a DTM. There's a whole bunch of articles I wrote, and usually you can download the data. The data I usually link, and then I show you the steps you can use to generate it. And now here, oh yeah, here we are in the. This is DTM I generated.
You will come right for some time. You will be there for some time, right?
I have very rudimentary support that allows you, for example, after you misclassify trees as buildings and you figure out what the green value is of the trees that you misclassified as buildings, you could, for example, remove the classification of buildings that have certain RGB ranges. Most of the time, people use last tools with some tools I haven't shown today, in particular last canopy, to produce a bunch of raster metrics that are then used for object-based classification or for random forest or any other imputation methods to do classification with multi-bands. And you basically compute a whole bunch of bands from either usually from the geometry, like kurtosis, standard deviation, percentages of LiDAR points above certain height thresholds, ratios between first and last returns, or first. So
Generally, whenever any vision takes place,
yeah.
it lies with the two sensors.
Yeah.
LiDAR. One is LiDAR sensor, another is optical camera.
Yeah, RGB.
Yes. Those signatures can be equal to last two.
Well,
the point cloud.
as I said, you can add the orthophotos with last color, for example. You can add the pictures onto the point cloud, so you have colored points at the end. That's possible. But then you have colored point clouds. How do you exploit colored point clouds? Well, visually it helps you in understanding if the classification is correct when you do voltage checking. But do I use right now in my last classify the fact that it's green points is more likely to be vegetation than when it's red points? No, I don't make use of that information. You can make simple rules with last to last, because you can make simple filter rules. You can say whenever the green value is between 128 and 153, and the red value is below this, then set it to vegetation class. But I don't have any tools that, in addition to the geometry information, sort of weigh, is that, well, I thought it would be a tree, but now I look at the color and I say it's not a tree. I don't have this directly, because colored LiDAR point clouds is still, in a way, I've written the tools for the lowest common denominator, and that's geometry. That's why the tools work if all you have is X, Y, Z, or if you have dense matching data. And yeah. Most of the time, when you want to do land cover classification, for example, what I would do, I would use last tools to take the LiDAR geometry and turn it into images. Into images is the same resolution or a compatible resolution to your RGB or to photos. And then use a third software, Trivandrum maybe, or Field Toolbox, for example, if you want to go open source, to then do the classification based on an image that has not only the 3 RGB and infrared bands, but also a band called, kurtosis of elevations above 2 meters, and several others. Last is very heavily used in the forestry sector in New Zealand, Canada, Australia, in the production forest, to make estimates about the timber volume, about all kind of parameters that are interested to the plantation owners in order to estimate how much dollars worth do I have right now in my plantation. The techniques they use is very similar to what you say, except RGB for them is usually not so interesting because most everything is the same species in these monocultures. If you are in a regular or in a just pictures of the landscape, in the Philippines where I've spent a lot of time, people do very extensive land cover classification. What is rice? What is mango fields? Where's banana? And so on. And where's rice paddies? And they use exactly what I just said. They design rule-based systems based on imagery, which has often trouble, shadows of clouds, people burning, large plumes, smoke everywhere. I think the same thing is also happening in this country, because somebody told me when I go to Delhi in 2 weeks, the air will be really bad because everybody will be burning on the fields. There's a certain crop, I forgot which one, that is just harvested, and they want to get rid of the extra and use it, and then they all pretty much burn at the same time. I forgot where I had this conversation, a week ago or so. The good thing is with LiDAR, you do get affected by the smoke, because the smoke, just like a cloud, blocks your LiDAR, your intensities go down, your first returns are up in the smoke, and but your geometry doesn't get affected too much. Well, I don't think. Interesting. I've never seen any study that shows geometry deformation under smoke. Not saying it doesn't happen. But what does happen is that all the first returns get stuck in the smoke, and even if the LiDAR penetrates, it penetrates much less under smoke because it reaches the actual terrain with much less intensity. So if you directly compare with some kind of typical techniques where you groups of pixels are compared to other groups of pixels in your reference plots, it won't work in all areas affected by smoke. Yeah. So you want?
Sir, I have a question.
Okay. I'm listening.
You had mentioned about that forest ruggedness factor when you were discussing one of the previous tool. Forest ruggedness
The classified. Yeah.
How far does that help in the species level identification of forest?
No. What you saw there is a very, very rudimentary mechanism, just to say this is most likely a planar object like a building, and this is like a very non-planar object like a forest. like a vegetation, which is very often wrong because anything that, like you see in these water tanks, roofs without tiles on, will be very fluffy when it's like a cloud, not like a plane. However, I do have a tool called Last Canopy, and it's, again, there is an article called that's exactly what I just talked about. And you can download this Brazilian eucalyptus forest for production of cellulose products. And here is the forest. And it basically leads you through a pipeline of quality checking. Here's the quality checking. And then it constructs a whole bunch of, okay, this is just forestry metrics. And the forestry metrics are just as an example. I use here not all of them, but just a few. You basically then compute from the LiDAR for your plots, and those things you can use for species discrimination, hopefully. Like the max, average, standard deviation, kurtosis, the percentile height 25, the median height percentile 50, percentile 75. Then something called the bin centile. Bin centiles are very interesting for species classification. Why? Because if you go to the bin centile is something I never really can put in words, and I always have to show with a picture. This is the typical forestry metric. A bin centile is for every pixel, 2 by 2 meters, 5 by 5 meters, 10 by 10 meters, where you want to know something about the property. You, for example, you compute the bin centile 80. That's a very typical, and in Interpine, it's a New Zealand researchy company advising large foresters how to employ LiDAR to make better predictions for their forests. A bin centile, I called it bin centile, and now everybody calls it bin centile. I didn't have a good name before. It means basically, in the bin that you're looking at, you look at the maximum height. In this case, 16.8 meters. And if you want to know the 80% bin centile, you get to 80% of this height, which is 1340, and you report how many points are under it. So a bin centile 80 here delivers 95 for this particular tree. Here, bin centile 30, 80 and 30 are very commonly used. 35 is the result. Now compare this to this one. So here, bin centile 30 and bin centile 10 are pretty much identical because it's a different kind of tree. It has a stem without any branches in this area, so that there's basically almost a hole in the tree. And bin centile is one way of capturing this. Of course, you will need more than one bin centile. You need sort of several. And what my customers seem to be doing, instead of figuring out exactly which one they need, they use Last Canopy, and they compute 100 different metrics. And then they eliminate variables that don't add anything to the solution. So they eliminate redundant variables until they find the strongest correlators, maybe 7 in the end. P95, P50, P30, P80, kurtosis, and canopy coverage. And these 7, they determine to correlate very well to make good predictions from the reference plots to the evaluation plots. Now this is a whole new topic we could do a whole day workshop about. I'll point you to the blog page, just type plots to stands in the search box, and you can follow that example step by step. Yeah. Huh? Blog. Plots to stands. Because that's what people usually do. That's what people have traditionally done. They go in the forest and just take 1,200 samples everywhere, and then they figure, well, the whole rest of the forest is probably just like upscaling from that. Well, that worked okay, but it was a lot of work, and it was very accurate because it didn't actually look at the forest except in those places. So now people still do that, but they only go to 200 plots. And then they use LiDAR. So they look, how does the plot look in the LiDAR? And they compute 7, 8, 9 metrics. Out of plot that they know, this plot I know. For example, they want to know how many coconuts per year. So they go into their coconut plot, and in this plot here, this 12 by 12 meter area, produces every year 759 coconuts. And they know it. And they measure it just based on the number of coconuts they collect. Now they compute, for this plot, they have it in LiDAR, they compute 10 metrics. And they say, well, every plot that looks like this in the metrics will produce 792 coconuts a year, multiplied by the area, because the areas may be different. And they do that for maybe 50 other plots. And they get, hopefully, different looking plots, producing different number of coconuts. And then they compute the same metrics everywhere in raster cells. And then for every raster cell, they now go, okay, this raster cell looks most like this plot here. So it's going to produce 497 coconuts. And then sometimes they don't use just one, they make a linear combination of two. That makes most fit. That's basically what the application is. You just have a bunch of samples that you hope are representative, like a base for all your area, and then you try to match the real measures, so the only LiDAR measured areas, via the condensed, you can't use every point, via these summaries of how the points look like, metrics, they summarize how the points look like, to actual production yield in the sample plots where you know both. You know the metrics and the yield. And that seems to work quite well for a number of variables. And in theory, you could put in anything there. It doesn't have to be timber volume. It doesn't have to be coconuts. It could be gorilla habitat. It could be, theoretically, it could be anything. Yeah.
So is it possible to process DTMs data and rasters?
Yeah. So IIST data can be, you can extract points from it. The problem is, GLAS is only profiles, I think, right? Yeah, but the GLAS, as far as I know, it's a satellite with one beam down. That means you're really only getting a line of points. Now, you can process this line of points in various ways with LAS tools, but most of the things we do today assume you have an area coverage. I can't do a ground classification based on one line. So you would need different techniques for that. Yeah. You have to ramp it up. Okay. If you come out here, please pick up, even if you already had one for the question, you can still get one, the regular one, that everybody gets. I have
certificate distribution. I want to take the name and request Dr. Martin to please distribute the certificates.
Oh, there's certificates now. All right, maybe with every certificate we get some. Wow, that's nice.
Mr. Sumit Natin.
Chocolate process.
Dr. Jagannathan Chokalenko.
चलो इधर से हैं
Mr. Jason ND. Mrs. Inu I. Dr. Smita Ashok.
ഈ പൊട്ടം വെറുതെ
Miss Janita Zero. Mr. K. Gokul. Mr. S. Irfat Karim. Miss Jason Jennifer.
Fix my head.
Mr. Nilambar Singh. Miss Lavanya. Miss K. Vaishnavi.
After doing that, this is how you take a photo.
Mr. Abhijit NG.
Department. No problem. I'm going to put. There's so much confusion.
Kinera Shanmuga.
You move. എനിക്ക് വേണ്ട
Mr. Rajesh Singh.
ചോക്ലേറ്റ് ഇട്ടോട്ട് പോയാ
Mr. Bhavin M.
ഞാൻ കണ്ടിട്ട് ഞാൻ പിടിച്ചില്ല
I just realized some people that
ഓക്കെ ഐ സീ
Mr. Joseph Timothy Kare. Mr. Seki Ram Kumar. Mr. IIST Rudolf Danu. Miss B. Preeti. Miss A.P. Anjana Abhirami. Miss G. Monica. Mr. Abhinandan S. Miss K. Divya Bharti.
എന്തോ
Mr. Vishnu Kabin M. Mrs. Anju S. Mr. Mohammed Asif K. Industry Teraswani. Industry Teraswani. Mr. Roshan Kumar. Mr. Ankur Garg.
जब मेरा नंबर है तभी लोग मेरा भी
Mr. Praveen Bajaj.
तुम क्या करोगे
Mr. Prabhu S. हमारे डॉक्टर नवीन भाई
Okay.
Now, I want to request Dr. Ramarao sir to present a momentous token of love to Dr. Mani.
Nice photo. Sir, take photo. By the time he goes,
Thank you. Big token.
chocolate.
Contains a typical Kerala traditional art form called Kathakali. So it's a small art piece and handicraft which showcases the character of Krishna.
Oh, it's not so small. It's the box that they eat.
This is pretty traditional only to this land of God. Okay.
Wow. Can I open it?
Yes, sure.
You get the box so it doesn't break.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody. All
Right.
rather
Yeah, yeah.
from
We'll take that one and
I hope you continue to use classroom. And then LiDAR data becomes available here. Start your research. Text events and details events circuit. So we start using the LiDAR data for the research. So
Hello, Vivek.
yeah, thank you.
Now, we distribute the pendants in the morning. So, anyone has an extra, please return it to the morning.